The icy December wind swirled around the cul-de-sac, carrying the scent of pine and the faint twinkle of distant bells. Our neighborhood, a tapestry of modest homes and meticulously trimmed lawns, was nestled under a blanket of pristine snow. Each house wore its winter attire, wreaths on doors, garlands draping porches, and lights wrapping the eaves like strands of glistening jewels. Mine was no exception, perhaps just a bit more exuberant in its display. Not gaudy, just joyful. Or so I thought. The morning after my lights had made their grand debut, I found a thick envelope in my mailbox, its corner bearing the unmistakable emblem of the Homeowners Association. I knew before opening it what lay inside. Karen's handiwork. The ink still drying, the letter was a masterpiece of passive aggression, a formal complaint about the excessive brightness and unseasonal exuberance of my decorations. Karen, our neighborhood's self-appointed custodian of order, had always found satisfaction in the mundane exercise of power. Her house stood as an immaculate fortress at the cul-de-sac's entrance, each window a vigilant eye, each shrub shaped with military precision. She prided herself on upholding a stifling sense of decorum, one that suffocated creativity and smothered individuality under the guise of community standards. I smiled, folding the letter neatly before tucking it back in the envelope. This wasn't the first time Karen had attempted to impose her own brand of order on the neighborhood. Her complaints were as much a part of the seasonal tradition as the decorations themselves. I imagined her pacing her kitchen, clucking to herself, frustration simmering just beneath the surface. My response was simple. I chose peace over pettiness. I let the joy of the season wash over me, unfazed by her attempts to dampen it. As twilight descended, my lights blinked to life once more, casting a warm glow that danced across the snow. A silent defiance, a gentle reminder that joy needn't be subdued. As I watched from my porch, the neighborhood began to transform. Flickers of light appeared one by one, as if my display had ignited a spark among my neighbors. A quiet rebellion. Houses that had once adhered strictly to Karen's standard now twinkled with newfound spirit. A kaleidoscope of colors painting the night. It was a sight to behold, a symphony of lights that sang against the winter's chill. Sipping hot chocolate, I couldn't help but chuckle at the irony. Karen, with her rigid rules and endless complaints, had inadvertently inspired a display grander than any she could have imagined. Her opposition had united us, turning her attempt at control into a catalyst for expression, a reminder that joy is resilient. The next morning, I found Karen standing stiffly at the edge of my driveway, her expression a mixture of disbelief and exasperation. A single line escaped her lips, laden with irony and unintended revelation. "They are too joyful." Her words lingered in the air, a testament to her struggle against the inevitable. But I said nothing. I simply nodded, letting the silence speak louder than any words could. The lights continued to twinkle in defiance, their glow a gentle insistence that joy, much like the season itself, would not be contained. The phone call to 911 was just the beginning. Karen, in her crusade against festive exuberance, had unleashed a storm. The police officer who arrived that night had offered little more than a bemused smile and a shake of his head, but Karen had seen his visit as a validation of her concerns. The next day came with her first salvo. A newsletter slipped under my door carrying the bitter aroma of freshly printed officiousness. The paper was heavy, as if to weigh down the joy it sought to smother. "Holiday lighting guidelines," it proclaimed in bold letters, underscored by a list of absurd rules seemingly plucked from the mind of someone who had never enjoyed a December snowfall. Decorations must not exceed 50 lumens per square foot, one line decreed, as if anyone had the means or the desire to measure such a thing. Another commanded that all lights be white, casting a sterile hue over what should be a riot of color. The pièce de résistance, a newly invented curfew, ensuring all lights were dimmed by 9 p.m. She was thorough. I'll give her that. Karen's warpath didn't stop at bureaucracy. By midweek, whispers began to circulate, as insidious and persistent as a winter draft. The neighborhood seemed to vibrate with the low hum of gossip, tinged with a mixture of fear and fascination at the lengths she might go. I heard my name more than once, accompanied by furtive glances and the shifting of feet. Every encounter became a performance. Neighbors would pause at my elaborate display, some offering quiet nods of solidarity, others avoiding eye contact as though my cheer was contagious. I, a pariah of merriment. It was at the monthly HOA meeting that Karen made her grand appearance. A vision in beige, clutching her latest arsenal of citations as if they were her proudest offspring. Her voice, sharp and unwavering, cut through the room like a November wind. She rattled off infractions like a laundry list of sins. Too many lights, improper holiday spirit, a violation of the community ethos. I watched her with a detachment that bordered on amusement. There was something almost theatrical about her zeal, the way she relished each accusation as if it truly mattered. As she spoke, I found myself pondering the nature of joy itself, how something so simple, so universally sought, could incite such fervor. A single line of dialogue broke the tension. A neighbor, one of the quieter ones who seldom spoke, chose that moment to voice the irony that hung above us all. Aren't we supposed to be a community? The room fell silent, her words lingering in the air like the echo of a church bell on a still morning. The meeting ended with no resolution. Karen, undeterred, left with a self-satisfied smirk, her mission in her eyes, yet unfinished. But for me, a seed of rebellion had been planted. As I returned home, the glow of my Christmas lights seemed to shine brighter, their colors more vibrant against the indigo sky. Karen had made me see my lights anew, not as mere decorations, but as beacons of defiance, a silent, twinkling protest against the mundane and colorless world she would have us inhabit. I felt a quiet power in that, a resolve as enduring as the season itself, to stand firm in the face of absurdity. And so, I waited for the next move, my heart as light as the snowflakes that began to fall gently from the sky. The ink on the police report had barely dried when I began my quiet rebellion. Karen's complaint about my too joyful Christmas lights swirled in my mind like a mischievous breeze. Its absurdity was a delightful paradox. How could joy ever be excessive? Yet here I was, untangling strands of light in a neighborhood straitjacketed by HOA rules and one woman's whims. The next day I stood by my window sipping coffee, watching the street like an impartial observer in a courtroom drama. There she was, Karen, bustling around in her yard, her movements sharp and precise like a commander inspecting her troops. Her gaze swept over each house, lingering on mine with a look that could chip paint. Her mouth pursed, the universal sign of disapproval. I took notes in a small, leather-bound journal, each entry a testament to her tyrannical reign over our cul-de-sac, her filing complaints about trash cans left out a minute too long, her insistence that every lawn was precisely manicured, and, of course, the crescendo, her call to 911 because my lights dared to twinkle with unapologetic cheer. There's power in documentation, each word a subtle brick, building a wall of quiet resistance. No confrontation, no raised voices. Just a record of truth. In the evenings, I dove into the HOA guidelines, dissecting them with the precision of a surgeon. Each clause was a potential ally or foe. It was there, hidden in the labyrinth of legalese. I found my counterstrike, a loophole the size of Karen's ego. The rules about holiday decorations were surprisingly vague, allowing for reasonable displays without defining what reasonable meant. Joy, after all, was subjective. With newfound resolve, I set to work. My yard became a canvas. each light a brushstroke in my masterpiece of rebellious illumination. I chose colors that danced and twinkled in harmony, a silent symphony of defiance, subtle enough not to breach the guidelines, yet undeniably joyful. As the sun dipped below the horizon, I watched from my window. The lights flickered to life, a ripple of color rolling across my lawn. It was understated, yet undeniably merry. I imagined Karen's reaction, the way her eyes would narrow, mouth tightening into that familiar line of displeasure. A small, satisfying victory. Weeks passed with the neighborhood buzzing quietly with speculation. I kept my journal updated, each entry a reminder of the absurdity we were woven into. The HOA meeting loomed, an annual gathering where grievances were aired and rules were debated. On that night, under the heavy gaze of our neighbors, Karen brought her grievances to the floor. Her voice, tinged with righteousness, laid out my supposed transgressions. The room held its breath, tension coiling in the air like a poised serpent. I rose, feeling the weight of countless eyes. I spoke calmly, my voice a river of reason flowing through the room. I laid out the guidelines, pointed to the vague language, the subjectivity of joy. My words were met with nods, understanding blooming like a cautious sunrise. A pause stretched, taut and expectant. Then, a voice from the back, cutting through the silence like a knife through butter. Perhaps we need more joy, not less. The irony was palpable, a gentle echo of my own thoughts. Karen's face flushed, a sunset of frustration. My subtle counter had found its mark. The meeting adjourned, the neighborhood settling into its usual rhythm. But beneath the surface, a change was brewing. Each house, each lawn began to reflect a newfound resilience, an understanding that joy, in its many forms, was a right worth protecting. I returned home, my journal tucked under my arm. The lights flickered on, casting warm hues across the snow-dusted lawn. I smiled, a quiet acknowledgement to the battle fought and the victory won. The street seemed brighter, the air lighter. Karen would watch, she would fume, but the lights, like truth, would continue to shine. In the weeks following the police visit, I let the moments breathe. Karen's penchant for drama had somehow become a rhythm in our little neighborhood. An errant chorus of sirens seemed to harmonize with the season's carols. But now, it was time for a symphony of a different sort. One conducted not with fanfare, but with the soft, deliberate turn of legal pages. I began my quiet campaign in the muted hum of my study. The only witnesses the swirls of steam from my coffee mug and the whispers from the pages of community guidelines. The HOA's rules, once just a background hum of suburban life, had transformed into an intricate map of opportunity. I navigated through clauses, each word a stepping stone towards a subtle justice. Karen had always been fond of wielding rules as weapons, but I had learned that there are rules for the rule makers too. I found solace in the irony of it all. Somewhere in the dense paragraphs lay the key to balance, cloaked in their own language, but potent, patient. It required no raised voices, no public disputes, just the gentle touch of a well-placed letter. I drafted a formal request for an audit of the HOA board's activities. In the world of tidy lawns and pristine facades, there was no greater threat than paperwork, an inquiry that would roll through the neighborhood like a slow, inevitable storm, kissing each roof with the promise of accountability. As the days passed, the decor around my house stayed defiantly bright. Strings of lights remained ablaze, a testament to resilience, spilling joyful light over the snow-dusted ground. Neighbors began to notice. A few even nodded in solidarity as they walked past, their breath visible in the cold air, their smiles warm against the chill. Karen, predictably, had not taken the news well. Her discontent was palpable, a frost that settled over every interaction. But the community, it seemed, had awakened. The audit stirred whispers and a ripple of change. People began to question, to ponder the fairness of the rules they'd allowed to govern them so indifferently. I found myself at the heart of a quiet revolution, one where the gaudy lights of holiday cheer had sparked something far deeper than mere petty disputes. Change, I realized, often begins in silence, a subtle shift beneath the surface, like the first thaw of spring. Karen's next move was predictable, yet somehow deflated. A letter slipped under my door, its tone accusatory but lacking its usual fervor. It was as if the act of writing it had sapped her spirit. For all her bluster, there was something profoundly human in her desperation to maintain control, to find certainty in the rigid lines she'd drawn around herself. And me? I sipped on the warmth of my quiet victory, content to watch the play unfold. The audit would take its time, as all good things do. The lights twinkled on, a constellation of small rebellions. There was a kind of poetry in watching Karen's tightly wound world begin to unravel, thread by thread. In the end, I understood that the true power lay not in the triumph of a single battle, but in the steady, unyielding march toward a more generous understanding. The seeds of this change were planted in the icy soil of winter, waiting to bloom in the new year. A different kind of joy, perhaps, one not so easily dimmed. The echo of sirens had faded, leaving an uneasy quiet in their wake, the kind of quiet that hangs in the air like a fog, not quite ready to let go of the chaos it cloaks. I stood at the edge of the lawn, the remnants of flashing blue and red lights still dancing in my vision. My Christmas lights glimmered defiantly against the night, their colors a soft and joyful rebellion to Karen's austere control. The ordeal had left its mark. Neighbors lingered in doorways, shadows against the glow of porch lights. An unspoken understanding passed between us. We had all seen Karen's true form, her brittle smile fracturing under the weight of her own misdeeds. I moved slowly, each step deliberate, as if treading on a tightrope strung between wariness and relief. The air was crisp, laced with the scent of pine and the faint sweetness of distant baking. It was the kind of night that promised warmth inside, a stark contrast to what lay in the heart of our community. Karen's house stood dark and brooding, the only one on the street to shun the festive glow. Her windows were eyes, unblinking and judgmental. Yet now, they seemed to hold a different story, one of isolation. I almost pitied her. Almost. The moments stretched, each minute expanding into a silent narrative of reflection. We had all been caught in her web, the invisible threads weaving through our lives, tangling our intentions with her demands. It was odd how one person could wield so much power with something as intangible as expectation. But tonight those threads had snapped. The police had left with the weight of understanding. This was not a matter of law, but of community. And Karen, with her righteousness as brittle as spun sugar, was finally sidelined. In the days that followed, a change swept through our neighborhood. Like a fresh coat of paint on weathered walls, there was renewal. Neighbors who had once kept to themselves now ventured out, drawn by the warmth of shared resilience. Laughter rolled through the streets, unrestrained and joyous, as though a great weight had been lifted. Karen remained on the periphery, a ghost of her former self. Her presence diminished, her power diluted by the very spirit she had sought to quash. In the end, it was not confrontation that restored the balance, but unity. We all felt it. An undercurrent of quiet rebellion that needed no grand gestures, only the unyielding glow of Christmas lights. The irony wasn't lost on me, that something as simple as colored bulbs could provoke such upheaval. Yet they had, and in their soft light, we found a truth that had been there all along. Community is forged in the face of adversity, not dictated by the whim of one. As the days shortened and winter settled its blanket over our town, I often paused to watch the lights twinkle in the night. They were a symphony of color, a testament to joy and defiance. And every time I did, I thought of Karen, that once imposing figure now diminished. A cautionary tale of what happens when control is mistaken for community. It was then I realized, amidst the irony and drama, that our lights had never been too joyful. They were just right.